Hey guys, welcome back to the Ultimate Goosebumps Man channel, and today I am here bringing you guys another classic book review from the original 62 line of Goosebumps, and this is book number 7, Night of the Living Dummy. Now this is an absolutely iconic book from the series. It is one that pretty much everybody knows. It's what brought Slappy into the Goosebumps canon, and pretty much kickstarted his popularity in this franchise and really set the tone for what Goosebumps could be at times. Now, my thoughts on the book are kind of mixed. I don't think it's as good as some people say it is. It's not horrible by any means. It's actually a pretty solid book overall. But there are one or two things that don't hold up that well about it, and I'll get into that later on. But first of all, let's get into the plot synopsis of this book. This book follows twin sisters Lindy and Chris, who are very competitive with each other, always are bickering and just at each other's throats. And one day, while they're messing around in this old construction lot that's next door, where this house is being built or renovated, I can't remember which one it is, but while they're going there, Lindy ends up finding a ventriloquist dummy in the dumpster, and she ends up naming him Slappy. And she instantly takes a liking to him and decides to bring him home and start maybe practicing ventriloquism and just getting into some kind of unique hobby. And she ends up being very good at it, which in turn ends up making Chris very jealous, and due to the competitive nature, she then starts begging her dad for her own ventriloquist dummy, which her dad ends up following through and brings home another dummy, which Chris ends up naming Mr. Wood. And soon there's all these very strange things start happening around the house, and usually the dummies, either Slappy or Mr. Wood, are at the center of it, and the girls start getting in trouble for these things that neither of them claim they did, and it starts raising suspicions, mainly with Chris, that maybe Slappy or Mr. Wood might be alive and causing issues around the house. However, there is kind of a dumb revelation in the middle of the book where it turns out all these pranks and things that were going on were caused by Lindy to get Chris in trouble because she was angry at Chris for trying to steal her thunder and be a ventriloquist as well, which is something that Lindy just wanted to be her own thing. And that's kind of where the first half of the book falls apart, just because it kind of feels like it was for nothing. But I'll get into more of my thoughts later on once I finish the plot synopsis. So basically, things start kind of settling down. They think everything's fine. And eventually, Chris is preparing for this show, this talent show she's doing at her school with Mr. Wood, and she finds a slip of paper in his pocket. And when she reads it, it's these words, Karu Marie Odano Loma Milanu Karano, the iconic spell from the Goosebumps franchise. And she reads that out loud, and of course, things start going awry. Mr. Wood starts acting on his own accord. He does this really terrifying and gross stunt during this talent show where he vomits this pea soup kind of substance all over the audience. Lots of weird stuff going on there. And things just kind of slowly continue to escalate to the point where Mr. Wood eventually reveals himself to be alive. And there's some really dark stuff that happens in this book, mainly towards the climax. A lot of people say this is one of the darkest books, even though it's not really. The climax, there is some dark stuff with Mr. Wood strangling a dog. And, there's some other stuff like that, basically Mr. Wood threatening to basically kill these girls if they don't do what he wants. And, yeah, overall, solid book. It's not perfect by any means. It's definitely kind of the middle of the dummy books, and I'll get more into my thoughts on the other books as I get to them later on, because I have read all 3 of these books numerous times. And I think the main strengths with Night of the Living Dummy to start is the creepy tension and atmosphere throughout the whole book. While some of it is ruined with that Lindy reveal later on, the second half of the book has some really great stuff in it with Mr. Wood, and it's just a very eerie book. There's some moments in here early on where Chris is in her room and she thinks that Slappy is staring at her. Kind of what the cover in this book kind of represents is just this idea of Slappy just sitting in a chair and staring at Chris. And that's just a really creepy image in my opinion. And again, further accentuated by this amazing art by Tim Jacobus. Like, this is the art that scared us all as a kid. I think every Goosebumps fan can say at one point or another, they saw this art and it traumatized them. And I think that's always, you gotta give credit for that. But I will say the cover is definitely the most memorable part about this book. I don't think it's as good as some people say it is. Not horrible by any means, in my opinion. I think it's still a very decent book. But it has some flaws. You know, Lindy and Chris's bickering can get kind of tiresome and old after a while. Again, that whole first half kind of feels like a waste when you reveal that all these pranks were just caused by Lindy. I think while the climax is very good, it's a small portion of the book, and I kind of wish there was a bit more of that in there. And Lindy and Chris just aren't the best characters overall. But I think that there's a lot of, you know, you gotta hold this book for some credit here because it is iconic. Everyone remembers it. It's the one that brought Slappy into the Goosebumps canon, even though Slappy is not the main villain. As I mentioned in the plot synopsis, the main villain is Mr. Wood. And Mr. Wood is a solid Goosebumps villain that I do kind of wish you got to see more throughout the series. But, of course, Slappy became the icon of Goosebumps. He became the most popular character in this whole franchise. And, you know, he stars in so many books. He's the main villain in both the movies. He's the main villain in the 2023 show. You know, you got a whole series dedicated to him with Slappy World. Just, you gotta give this book some credit for bringing Slappy into the franchise, even if he's not the main focus of the book. And I think that overall this book has some very enjoyable moments to it. Again, mainly near the climax. I think Mr. Wood is some very sinister villain. He's honestly sometimes more sinister than Slappy and he's more of a threat, I feel like. Because what I noticed when reading these books, because I've read the other Dummy books multiple times, Mr. Wood is much more of a physical threat. While he's a dummy, obviously, he's not super big or strong or anything. You know, he is more violent. He's willing to strangle a dog. He does a ton of other things in the climax that just makes him more of a physical threat, while Slappy is much more of a psychological threat. You know, he's always causing mischief to kind of isolate his victim and make them think maybe they're going crazy, make their families think they're going crazy, which is perfectly accentuated in Night of the Living Dummy 2, which I'll get to farther down the line whenever I get to that book review. But, you know, I think that Slappy is a bit more of a psychological villain, as I said. So it is kind of interesting seeing the difference between the two dummies. And Mr. Wood, I think, has made a couple appearances in other Goosebumps media, but, you know, he's still a very solid and memorable antagonist, even if he is kind of outshined by Slappy throughout the rest of the series. I would love to see more stuff with Mr. Wood, honestly, even though the ending to him is kind of definitive with how he ends up getting defeated in the book. But yeah, overall, very solid book. It isn't great by any means. It's very middle of the road. There's a lot of parts that drag in it, but it is still a solid, creepy book. It's probably one of the creepier atmospheres of the original 10, I will say, because I've read through all those 10 by this point, and this definitely has some of the best atmosphere throughout the book, especially in some certain scenes. And I would still give this a recommendation. Like, if you're reading through the series, definitely don't skip Night of the Living Dummy. I really don't think you should skip any of the Dummy books. I think all of them have their own strengths and weaknesses, even the ones I don't like all that much. But definitely read this one. It's a solid read. You'll have a good time with it, even through the slower moments. And it's such a shame that this book never got adapted into an episode from the 90s show. Like, I would have loved to see this adapted, maybe even into a two-parter. I don't know if it would have fit a two-parter, but I think it would have been really cool. And it's just kind of a shame that the screenwriters never really adapted it. But that's all I really have for this one. It was kind of a short, not really a short video, but I don't really have much else to say about it. I've given my thoughts. Check out Night of the Living Dummy, as I said. It's great. And I'll be getting back to more videos with you guys soon. I have a few more reviews scheduled for Girl Who Cried Monsters book and episode, Welcome to Camp Nightmares book and episode, Ghost Next Door, Haunted Mask, and Be Careful What You Wish For coming up soon, because I've gotten through all those books. I'm super behind on reviews, and I'm sorry about that. I'm hoping to get back into it. And also, we are quickly approaching 300 subscribers, which is just awesome. Thank you guys so much for your love and support for this channel. It means the world to me. And thank you to all of the other guys in the Goosebumps community, you know, Goosebumps Completionist, Michael Goosebumps Fan, BD Horror, or Horror Tavern. All of these people who are just awesome and really have just helped boost my, you know, community, boost this channel's popularity, and just help me make some new friends in the community. Have just been so awesome and accepting. And of course, all the Goosebumps crew guys, Goosebumps Aussie fans, Shawin, and the Goosebumps channel. All these guys are awesome, and I want to thank every single one of you guys for your support and just welcoming me into this community that I love dearly. It's been such a blast ever since I've been in the community and being part of some of these podcasts and making more videos and collaborations. It really means the world to me, and I just, again, want to thank you all, and I'm hoping to maybe get some kind of special video out for 300 subscribers. I don't know when it's going to be yet, but I will work on that and definitely get that out to you once we hit 300 subscribers, or maybe surpass it depending on my schedule. But again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a scary day, and I will see you in the next video.